Welcome to Enchantment of Eternity's review for the Expanse Season 2, Episode 10, Cascade. This video is a part of a series of videos where I review episodes of the Expanse, so I'll have to start off by giving a spoiler warning for the Expanse up to Season 2, Episode 10. If you haven't seen up to this point, you may not want to watch this video, otherwise some things may be spoiled for you. So this episode was pretty interesting. It was mostly kind of just set up for, that's not very exciting, but it does push the story along nicely as it furthers many of the character stories. I was a bit disappointed that we didn't get any more follow-up to the Venus storyline, but patience, I'm sure we'll get to it soon. So let's start with the Holden storyline. It has much, not really happened here to push the story forward, as they're still looking for Prax's daughter and the man Dr. Strickland, who has ties to Protogen, who's probably involved in all of this. But we got a lot of great character moments in this storyline. The big headline for me was how different Holden has become, whereas in season 1 he was sternly against using violence almost to a fault, whereas now he's the one who's all for it, and Naomi is the one cautioning him against it, where it used to be the other way around. And Naomi pretty much hit the nail on the head when she said that every shitty thing that they do makes the next one that much easier. And thus, we do have this trajectory of Holden slipping into darkness. And of course, Amos X has their henchmen, but he listens to Holden and Naomi. And it's interesting to see that he understands this dynamic. It was fascinating getting his interactions with Prax, where Amos explained outright that Naomi and Holden were good people, better than he was. And the storyline of them dealing with the slimy con man who takes advantage of those less fortunate than him and in a situation of crisis, as he finds people for people, but at a high cost. Food, which is at a premium. In fact, for a while, I almost thought that Holden and Amos would trade away the lasagna that Alex gave them, but I liked how they found him despicable and decided not to pay for his help, but strong-armed him instead. And as much as Naomi was against it because they were acting like thugs, I actually think Holden was totally in the right, as this guy was a leech that needed to be put in his place. But on the other hand, Naomi was on point to spot the drastic change in Holden and to see that he's only getting worse. However, I loved how after Amos attacked the guy, Prax was like, "Well, I thought you said you weren't a homicidal maniac," to which Amos replied, "Well, I didn't kill him," which is correct. Just beating up that dude doesn't technically make him a homicidal maniac. So we did get a couple revelations here. First, that shady dude did find a recording with Strickland going off with Prax's daughter to some old settlements, so Holden now knows where to begin his search. And the other is Prax's discovery that the whole ecosystem in Ganymede, which is their primary station food source for the outer settlements, is about to collapse, which could change the entire political and economic landscape of the entire system. So this will definitely affect things quite a bit. So let's get to the stuff with Bobby Draper and Avasarala on Earth, which I absolutely loved. So a lot of great revelations and interactions in this storyline. First of all, I loved how Aaron Wright seemed to be on Avasarala's side now, even from the start where he seemed to be just as on point in knowing that the Martian ambassadors were covering something up, as he made the point that they were using peace as an excuse. And I think this change in Aaron Wright did come about because Mal abandoned him and wouldn't even respond to him when Eros was about to destroy Earth. That and the fact that Earth was almost destroyed made him realize he was backing the wrong side. So I do firmly believe his change is sincere, and so does Avasarala, who is a very good judge and character. But it's interesting that he even went as far to actually tell Avasarala about it. I didn't really think he'd go that far, but it just shows how much he regrets his actions. But of course, he knew that she already knew. He was just confirming it. And Avasarala was also on point by not turning him in, as he could still be useful to her, as I think he proved in his abilities to read the Martians, who would actually make a powerful ally for her. But what's really interesting in this episode is the revelation of the possibility that the incident on Ganymede was the Martians testing a weapon. Whenever this possibility was brought up before, I kind of just dismissed it as the Earthers being paranoid or trying to blame everything on Mars. But now, when I think about it, it does make total sense. Because I'd always thought of Mal and Protogen as being involved with Earth, but his connection to Earth was mainly through Ehrenreich, which he had severed ties with after he saw Avasarala was on to him, so it makes total sense that he'd run next to Mars for help, and that they'd be willing to help so they could get a new powerful weapon to use against Earth. And so that means the incident on Ganymede was Mars testing this weapon, and it went wrong and started this incident. Draper and her team were never intended to be killed, but the test went wrong, and when it did, the Martian military went straight to covering it up, which explains why they tried their hardest to hide Draper's story and convince her not to say anything about the soldier without a suit. I still don't know the fullness of the implications of how this protomolecule differs from Eros, but it does seem apparent that Protogen is working with Mars now. So Draper's storyline was pretty interesting, as well, as she has acclimated to Earth better than her fellow Martians, but is still having issues with dealing with this different environment. And it speaks a lot to her tough character that she'd be willing and able to break out of her compound just to see the ocean. And her journey there was interesting, as well, as we learn more about the kind of poverty that Earth is wrapped in, which makes it a bit different than some other places we've seen. It also gives us more of an insight into kind of place that Amos grew up in and how he became the tough, non-feeling person that he did. And when Draper finally did get to the ocean, it was dirty and disgusting by our standards, which also goes to show how Earth is overpolluted in this time frame. But interesting that Draper saw it as beautiful, because she had never seen an ocean before, and the whole concept was foreign to her. But what I loved the most was her conversation with Avasarala. First of all, I love Avasarala's right-hand man, Kotiar. I don't think we've seen enough of him yet, and I hope he comes into play more later on. But it was awesome to see he was able to find Draper, find out that Draper escaped her room, and then find where she was before the Martians found her, which allowed for this awesome conversation between Avasarala and Draper. And it was great to see Avasarala tell her that her own government probably left her out to dry. And of course, at first, she didn't believe her and even outright said, "You're the enemy, you're probably just playing with my head." But I do believe that once Draper actually has time to think about this, she's going to realize that everything Avasarala was saying made total sense and lines up with everything that she knows. And she's going to notice all the Martian military leaders continue to act guilty and try to hide the truth from her, so she's going to come to the conclusion that Avasarala was right. I mean, the fact that Avasarala was able to show her exactly the type of man that she saw on Ganymede, that was powerful, and that's going to sit with her. And this is so great that before Draper deathly hated Earth and wanted nothing more than to go to war with them. So it's going to be fascinating to see her come to the realization that her own government betrayed her. And I so desperately want to see a Draper and Avasarala alliance. That would be absolutely amazing. So my rating for Cascade out of 10 is an 8, extremely good. Overall, a pretty slow episode that didn't do that much to push the story forward, but we got some great character developments, such as seeing Holden fall deeper into the dark side and, to learn the dark side of Earth as well. And the scene where Ehrenreich confessed to Avasarala was amazing, as was the scene where Avasarala told Draper exactly what was happening. Also absolutely amazing. So that's it for my review of Cascade. Unfortunately, I will not have time to review next week's episode, but I will be back here to review the final 2 episodes of the season, so be sure to check back here for that. Also, be sure to check out my channel for many more videos on other shows like Game of Thrones, Star Trek, Black Sails, The 100, and more. So be sure to subscribe so you can keep up with all of that. And thanks a lot for watching.